Okay, so hello guys. For this video, we are going to discuss things related to limits and continuity. So we are not going to have all things about limits, but as far as we could go, we are going to discuss all the details for the prelim subject or for the prelim of basic calculus. So we have um, your limit is represented sa amo nga form. So we have it could be, so we have limit of function of x. Limit of function of x as x approaches c is equal to L. So that is how we read ng sininga equation. So based on our discussion, we were able to know that we have two types of limit, or there are two ways in order to find the limit. So first, we have using a left hand limit, and next we have a right hand limit. So our for example, for this function, this is read as. So take note of the symbol negative here and positive here. So for negative nga symbol dere, so it is read as limit of function of x as x approaches c from the left. And then this one is limit of function of x as x approaches c from the right. So anong butsilingon, or what does it mean if we have a limit approaching from the left and approaching from the right? So if we have this one as a left-handed limit or approaching from the left, it is signifying, or it means that we are going to substitute values which is less than the specified limit. So for example, ang aton nga limit there is 2. So okay, we have 2 here. So we have 2 from the right and 2 from the left. So ang butsilingon is that for left-hand limit or from limit approaching from the left, kinanglan natin mag-substitute values which is less than sa 2. So we have to substitute value which is less than 2. Okay, next, for the limit approaching from the right, we have to substitute value of limits which is greater than 2. So, ano nga mga possible nga values na kinanglan natin i-substitute? So, for this one, since we are approaching 2, so possible nga mga values na pwede natin i-substitute are lapit-lapit siya sa 2 or approaching sa 2 but not exactly 2. So, it could be possible that we will be substituting values like 1.9, 1.99, or any values which is really approaching sa 2. So for the right hand limit, we could substitute values nga 2.01 for example, or 2.1, or any values nga greater than sa aton nga specified limit which is 2. Okay, so that's it. So next we have this one. So take note, we have the left hand and right hand limit. So how could we know that your limit exists? So your limit exists if the limit from the left and the limit from the right are equal. So your limit exists if, so take note of this one, your limit from the right, or from the left and from the right should be equal. So that's it. Kung namabalaan natin that our limit exists. So that is the reason ng ginagamit natin ang table of values in order to know kung nag-exist ang aton nga specify or ang aton nga limits ng certain nga function. So there are different ways in order to find the limits of a function. So one of those process or ways in order to find the limit of a function is to look at the graph of the certain function. So this process or this way is to, you should be knowledgeable of your coordinate system. So you should follow the graph. Then in order to find the limit, halin sa imong left, for example, you are going to follow the graph as sa negative nga direction pakadto sa x value sa nga ara sa question. So kung ano nga value of y ang siya nag-approach, that is your limit. So kung from the right naman ang imo nga ang imong limit. So follow the graph from the positive x direction toward the x value in your specified nga question. Note nga ang y nga value kung sa diin ka ma-approach, so that is amo na nang imong limit. If the y value you approach on the left matches the y value you approach on the right, then the limit does exist. So we are going to show kung ano na siya, kung paano siya himuon sa aton nga mga graph. So we have, okay, for example, you have, okay, so this type of example says that you have, okay, so this is not saying ang aton nga limit is 3 na gid ha. So this is just an example lang. For example, you have the value nga amo niyang nakita naton. So this is not claiming amo gid ang aton nga limit. But for example, amo ning nakuha naton nga value. So if this is not considering sang sining equation, so if for example you are going from the left, so you have this graph, so move ka dira, and then kung paglambot mo sa specific value like positive 1, so pangitaon mo lang kung ano nga value of y ang ari diri. So y naton nga value diri is positive 3. So that is amo na diri mo considered nga limit if amo mo ang ginapangita. Then from the right, for example, so kung halika sa the right, for example, alin giding imong graph, move ka diri pakadto diri, and then for specific value nga x naton is equal to 1, pangitaon mo lang ang value sang imo y. So that is looking at the graph. But take note that if for example parehas gid ang imong ang imo bing nga graph or ang gin-provide nga graph is may ara dira whole. So amo na or amo ni nga figure. So ang possibility is that there is a jump discontinuity sa ating nga graph. So it will be later discussed sa next as end part of this discussion kung ano na siya ang jump discontinuity. Okay, so we will have more na mga examples later on para mas ma-establish naton ang pagpangita sa limits using the graph. So here is one of the examples. So for example, you are given the sang function nga 4 minus x, then ipapangita sa imong limit as x approaches 3. So there are two ways sa nahambal na naton kagina. We have from the left and from the right nga limit. So first, from the left, so halin diri, we are going to move. So assuming that your function is already graphed na. So nag-graph na siya, for example, in the coordinate plane. So move ka lang halin sa sinanga point. Then move ka pakadto sa aton limit. Aton limit is pakadto sa 3. So automatic. So for the values ng 3, this is ang aton nga value. So from the right ka naman, halin ka sa diri nga point pakadto dira, and then nagtabuay ang aton nga limit from the left and from the right. So both silingon, the limit exists for this function. So that's how simple it is kung maglantaw kita sa graph. Okay, so another way of finding the limits is using your table of values. So take note that if you are going to graph sa ating equation sa ating function like sa nakita ninyo sa babaw, it would be easier kung ara na daan ang graph or na plus star na nga daan ang graph if nakita na naton. But how anong matabo if wala ka pa sa nakabutang dara nga graph? So ang possibility is that you are going to graph sang certain nga mga equation. So in order to graph sang equation, kinahanglan man siya po naton your table of values. So para makagraph ka sang equation, kinahanglan mo x kag y para sa coordinate system naton. So this is how useful is your table of values. So for this one, we are going to have this discussion about sa table of values. So paano kwaon ang table of values or paano siya i-substitutan? So for table of values, kinahanglan naton ang imong keen attention or your kinahanglan nga focus kagid into looking for the numbers. So what will be what you will be doing here is that you will be substituting lang sa certain value of x in order to find the value of y. So to find the limit from the left, notice what value appears to be approaching as it gets closer to the x value in the question. So, okay, for example, we have here, so halin ka sa left, so take note lang kung ano nga value ang nag-approach ang imo nga answer. So that's it. Next, from the right, same ang Japan, substitute ka values and then take note lang kung ano nga number nag-approach ang imo nga answer as you get closer to a specific nga x value sa imo nga question. So, if ang imong answer for the value of function of x appears to be approaching the same value bisan from the left na siya or from the right, so automatic that will be the value of your limit or but silingon the limit exists. So for example, for this one, so nag-substitute kita value halin sa from the left pakadto kaya nga aton nga limit or x approaches 1. So hindi kita mag-substitute automatic sa 1 if we are going using table of value. So approximately equal to 1 lang. So we have 0.999 and aton answer will be 2.997. So from the right naman, we have sini nga mga values as nga we have 1.001 which is approaching sa answer nga 3.003. So if we are going to look at this, ang ating nga table of values is approaching certain number which is 3. So aton limit is 3 and therefore limit exists. So now, okay. So ari na siya ang mas klaro nga itsura sa aton nga table of values. So take note that aton nga limit there is 3 is this approaching the value nga positive 3. Okay, so next we have, okay, so what if we are given sa sini nga equation? So we are having this equation nga limit of x minus 2 over x squared minus 4 as x approaches 2. So kinahanglan natin fillinan sang mga answer. So we have, so let's have, so the best way is to use your calculator and then use the calc function of your calculator. So we have alpha x minus 2 all over x squared minus 4. So this is our equation. We are going to calculate. So we have calc, then substitute the value nga 1.9. So this is equal to 0.256. So we have 0.256. So next, we are going to calculate and add the value. So we have 1.99. So aton answer will be 0.251. So we have 0.251. And then for 1.999, we are going to substitute sa aton nga answer or sa 1.999 sa aton nga equation. Aton answer will be 0.25. 0.2501. Next, we are going to substitute value from the right. So we have substitute natin ang 2.1. We have calculate 2.1. So aton nga answer will be 2.244. So we have 0.244. Next, another value is 2.01. So calculate natin 2.01. Aton answer will be 0.249. So this is 0.249. Next, for 2.001. So calculate, we have 2.2 and then 1. Then aton answer will be 0.2499. 0.2499. So, if we are going to look sa sininga part, we are really approaching sang value nga padto na sa 2 naton nga limit. And then we are going to look sa aton nga result or sa aton function of x. So aton answer is approaching a certain value which is 0.25. So ang aton gali nga limit is 1/4 or 0.25. Okay, another way of trying to have an approach in finding the limits is to find the limits analytically. So what is needed here is your knowledge on mathematics, knowledge on algebra. So sometimes the limit of function of x at a certain value of x happens to be the substitution lang ang sina nga value. So meaning there is not a whole or wala sang jump to continuity, wala sang asymptote or continuous ang aton nga function at the certain value of x. So specifically, this is pertaining to polynomials and rational functions with non-zero nga denominator. So, we are trying to avoid sang mga answers nga may zero sa denominator. So, dapat non-zero denominator or else we can have sang indeterminate nga function. So, ang ginahimo naton kung hindi lang man mag-zero ang denominator, we could directly substitute the values. So, pwede na natin ma-substitute ang values. So, the limit can be determined by substituting some values ang aton nga C, for example, into your function of x. So, considering nga, wala kita sa non-zero value sa aton nga denominator. Okay? Okay, so for example, we have sang aring equation, we are going to solve this one. Pangitaon natin ang limit as x approaches 2. So, also, take note of some properties of limits na kinahanglan natin mabalaan. So, this is pertaining to the limit theorem. So, we have limit of or the sum of limits. So if you will be asked to find the value of your limit, so limit of f plus g, so isa-isahon mo lang, you have limit of function of x, pangitaon mo plus limit of g of x. Then i-add lang natin. Same also with your subtraction. So if you have subtraction here, pangitaon mo ang limit of function of x minus limit of g of x. So that's it. For multiplication, find the individual limits and multiply. Next, for the division, so this is it. Kinahanglan lang pangitaon ang individual ng mga limits provided that dapat atong denominator will not be equal to 0. Because as what I have said, we will yield with the answer nga indeterminate if we have 0 sa denominator. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, so for example, we are given sa sininga value. So find the limit of x squared plus x plus 2 over x plus 1 as x approaches 1. So automatic. So if we are going to inspect, hindi man kita makahawa sang zero nga denominator if we substitute diretso. So pwede lang ma-substitute kita diretso. So substituting sa sininga function, we will have Okay, substituting sa atong answer, we will have x squared plus x plus 1. So we have 1 squared plus 1 plus 2 all over sang 1 plus 1. So we have 1 plus 1 plus 2. So this is 4 all over 2. So atong answer will be 2. So 1 squared plus 1. So this is 2 plus 2, that is 4 over 1 plus 1. We have 2. 4 divided by 2 is positive 2. Our limit is 2. So we could also check gamit ang atong calculator we have. So alpha y. So equals. So we will have the value alpha x squared plus x plus 2 all over alpha x plus 1. So we have to calculate and substitute the value, which is 1. So our answer will be 2. So that means that our answer is correct. Okay, next we have okay, so let us proceed sa ating next nga topic, which is another way of solving the problem, or the approach is finding, as what I have said, is finding limits analytically. But remember the following rules. So remember that a rational function could have a vertical nga asymptote when the denominator is equal to 0. So while the numerator is not. So the best way is to do the factoring both the numerator and the denominator, so that makakancel kita sa may common nga factor. So then kita dayon na perform sang direct nga substitution. Okay, so there is also a procedure for finding asymptotes. So, but we are not going to deal with this nga detailed gid. Set the denominator equal to 0 and solve. So, the zeros are the vertical asymptote. Everything else is the domain. So, compare the degrees of your numerator and denominator. If the degrees are the same, so take note sa sininga mga rule in order to find your asymptote. So, if the degrees are the same, sa imong numerator kag denominator, then you have the horizontal asymptote at y equals sa numerator nga leading coefficient divided by the denominator's leading coefficient. If your denominator's degree, so for the second condition for your asymptote, if the denominator's degree is greater than by any margin, you have the horizontal asymptote at y is equal to 0. So that means that at the x-axis. So if your denominator's degree, so for the third condition, the numerator's degree is greater by a margin of 1. So kung isa lang ang difference of the degree of your numerator and your denominator, you have a slant asymptote, which you will find by doing some long division. So we will not get into the detail with this because this is sa geometry nga topic. So you could better have a some review with your geometry nga topics for your asymptotes. So now we have finding limits analytically. So let us continue. For example, you are given the equation, find the limit of x cubed minus 1 over x minus 1. So we have, so x cubed minus 1. So take note that if we are going to substitute directly the value of 1 sa aton equation, we would yield sa aton nga answer nga may ara sang, okay, may ara kita possible nga 0 sa atong denominator kung masubstitute kita diretso. So, the best way is to factor danay sa aton nga answer or sa aton nga equation. So, we are going to factor sa aton nga numerator by long division or by synthetic division. So, you are going to perform the division here para ma-factor naton. So, if medyo may problema kita with your factoring, so you can review your algebra in order to perform this one. So manipulating the equation, we will have the factor nga ang aton nga x cubed minus 1 will be x minus 1 times x squared plus x plus 1 all over x minus 1. So this time, if after factoring, we know that we could divide out sang like nga factors. So, or we could cancel out sang aton nga x minus 1. So, we could cancel x minus 1, leaving x squared plus x plus 1. So, dari kita din pwede makasubstitute value of your x approaching 1. So, we have 1 squared plus 1 plus 1. So, this is direct substitution. Then, aton answer will be positive 3. Okay, so that's it. How simple kung maggamit kita sang sininga process. Okay, for example, you are provided with sa among nga function or sininga equation. You are going to find the limit of x squared minus 1 over x plus 1 as x approaches negative 1. So take note that if we are going to substitute the value of negative 1 sa an equation, we will be having indeterminate na function because we have sa 0 sa ating denominator. So the best way to solve this one is to factor danay sa ating nga numerator. So to factor your numerator, we will have this is a perfect square binomial. So this will be x minus 1 times x plus 1 all over sa x plus 1. Okay, this time, we would know nga, pwede na natin makancel ang value nga x plus 1. Leaving na lang sang aton nga equation nga x minus 1. So, dari kita substitute sang value nga negative 1. So, we have negative 1 minus 1 will be equal to negative 2. Okay, next one we have okay, we have sa sininga equation or yung sininga way in order to simplify aton equation through rationalization technique. When there is a radical, multiply by the conjugate, simplify, and then perform the direct na substitution. So, isa ni sa mga medyo problema man sa mga estudyante if you have radicals, we yield with a different answer. So, the best way is to rationalize the isang aton nga function. Okay, we have this example. So, find the limit of the square root of x plus 1 minus 1 all over x as x approaches 0. So, take note kaya hindi kita pwede makasubstitute diretso sang 0 sa aton nga denominator kay may ara kita sang indeterminate. So, the best way to perform this is to rationalize ang numerator kay para hindi kita maka produce ang 0 sa aton nga denominator. So, ang ang mga process naton in order to rationalize sa aton nga equation. So, given nga may ara ka square root of x plus 1 minus 1, ang iya sina nga conjugate is change mo lang ang sign diri. So, negative, ang iya nga conjugate is positive. So, take note nga gin-multiply naton is may ara ka lang positive diri. So, multiply mo sa numerator and multiply mo sa denominator kay para nag-multiply lang kita by 1. So, 1 lang aton nga gin-multiply kay equal lang man ang numerator kag denominator ang gin-multiply naton. So, for this one, ang matabo dayon is we will have or we will create a perfect square binomial. So, perfect square binomial para sa aton square ni naton ang square root of x plus 1 madulang square root leaving sang x plus 1 na lang. Square naton ang negative or ang 1 will be 1 na lang, then we have minus nga sign diri. Then for our denominator, we will have, so hindi naman natin pwede multiply, so we have na lang sa sininga function x times square root of x plus 1 plus 1. Then, pwede natin makancel ang aton nga 1 leaving na lang sang x sa ating numerator. And then, take note that we could have sang x numerator, x denominator, pwede pa natin makancel. Ang mabilin sa babaw is 1 over square root of x plus 1 plus 1. So, take note that x should not be or ang aton nga answer diri, ang x nato will not be equal to 0 na. So, kung mag-substitute kita sa aton nga answer or sa aton nga value, we will have so now we can evaluate sang sininga equation by substituting some values sang 0 sa aton nga limit which is 0. So aton answer will be, so substitute kita diri 0. So ang answer natin will be 1 over square root of 1 plus 1. Square root of 1 natin is 1 plus 1. So automatic we will have so 1 over 1 plus 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So aton answer will be 1/2. So that's it for rationalization or rationalizing the denominator. One of the process kung mag-analytical kita nga method of solving the equation. So now we have limits of trigonometric function. So it is simple and no way of finding the limits of isang mga given. But it is simple tungod nga you are just going to substitute para sa ginahimo natin sa purely substitution nga method of trigonometric function. So super easy. So the limit of sine x as x approaches c should be sine c lang. Butangan mo lang da kung ano da nga value. Limit of cosine of x, so kung ano da nga value. But take note that we are referring here sa sininga mga values, trigonometric function, dapat ang imo nga calculator nga ara nakabutang sa radians nga mode kag hindi sa degree nga mode. So take note, evaluate the limit of cosine of x over sine x minus 3. So we are going to solve this one. So let's try kung ari diri. Okay, so kung ano ni ang value sang ari nga equation. So take note or check tabi kung na-solve na diri sa dalam. So we have so we limit of sine x, ano to ganyan given, cosine x over sine x minus 3. So, diretso na lang ito danay for the limit of certain yung mga function. So, take note, in the function sine x over x, so f(x) equals sine x over x, your x should approach 0. As x approaches 0, the limit is 1. So, I will be showing kung paano na siya himuon sa calculator. So, take note. Okay. Okay, so for example, substitute natin diretso. So, tanawan natin if your answer will be equal to 1. So, let us calculate. So, sine x. So, diretso ito na lang we have sine x all over x. Okay, then we have to calculate. So, ang value of your x is 0. So, we will have so, math error siya. So, calculate tabi approaching lang sa 0 which is 0.001. So, pila aton answer. Aton answer will not be equal to 1 para sa ginhambal niya dere. But aton answer is approaching sang sining mga values. So, but silingon sa lang aton nga pag-substitute. This is because ang aton gigamit diri nga degrees ayon nga mode sa calculator, ang aton complex nga value is degree. So, kinahanglan naton iset dapat ang aton nga calculator into radians, rad. So, radians dapat ang imong calculator. Next, if we calculate this one, ang aton nga value is 1.001. So, aton answer will be 1. So, take note, dapat naka-radians ang aton nga calculator. So, for number 2, 1 minus cosine x kuno all over x. As x approaches 0, dapat ang aton nga answer will be 0. So, i-check ta danay if for example, ang i-substitute natin nga value is degrees. So, ano natin answer? So, we have 1 minus cosine x. Then, aton all over x. Then, calculate. Then, substitute kita sang 0. Diretso na lang. Equals. So, 1 minus cosine x all over x, as we substitute sang value nga 0, aton answer is 0. So, it is because hindi man siya dependent ang cosine sa value sang aton nga y. But, if we are going to have some mga function like sine and cosine, dependent siya into radians nga values. So, for example, we have sa ikatatlong function, we have tangent x. For example, we have tangent tangent x all over x. Then we are going to calculate and substitute the value of 0. So we have sa aton answer nga 0.01517 something. So which is not equal to 1. So this time we are going to set sa aton nga calculator into radians. So aton calculator should be in radians nga mode. So number 4, so we click for here. Then calculate naton and find the value or substitute the value nga approximately equal to 0, then aton answer will be equal to 1. So the safest way is that kinanglan if you are going to solve some limit of a function or masubstitute ka mo para makita nimo ang limit of functions, so your mode sa imo calculator should be in radians. So para safe ka mo. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so we have, I just would like to emphasize ang sining mga values na kinanglan naton i-avoid if we are dealing with mathematics. So here are some of the indeterminate ng mga forms or indeterminate ng mga values. So indeterminate forms do not guarantee that a limit exists, nor do they indicate that the limit is, or what the limit is, if one does exist. When faced with indeterminate forms, perform analytical evaluation such as factoring and rationalization. So, kung ang imo answer, for example, nag-0 all over 0 or nag-infinity all over infinity, infinity minus infinity, so mga amo na values, we should avoid that if we are dealing with limits. That is indeterminate na forms of numbers. So, examples sina are the actually, may ara lang gid sang 8 ka indeterminate na forms. So, that is 0 divided by 0. So, hindi na siya pwede. Next, we have infinity all over infinity. So, hindi ni pwede nga value. Next, we have infinity minus infinity. So, hindi ka man pwede nga infinity minus infinity is equal to 0. So, hindi na siya pwede. Next, 0 multiplied mo sa infinity. So, hindi pwede. 1 raised to infinity cannot be. So, hindi pwede. Indeterminate ni. 0 raised to 0 will be indeterminate also. And infinity raised to 0 will be indeterminate. So, take note of that functions or that ng mga indeterminate forms of numbers. Okay, now we have next nga topic which is about continuity. So continuity, so a function is continuous if at x there is no holes, no jumps, or no gaps. So limit exists at certain nga function kung maghamba ka. For example, you simply lang if you have graph, for example, dapat dire-diretso siya. Wala ka dapat sang buho-buho dire or jump kinahanglan wala ka sang pwede lusutan. Continuous siya dapat. So pwede nga dire-diretso lang nga linya or pwede nga curve siya dire-diretso, so you have continuous nga graph. That is continuity. So if for example you have discontinuous nga function, so there are two types sang discontinuity. So we have, we have discontinuity here, not continuity. Removable discontinuity kag non-removable nga discontinuity. So we have ari nga value limit of as sang sini nga graph. Take note that we have may sakit dari ka hole. So pwede natin himuon is to pangitaan natin siya sang values kung paano natin siya mangin continuous. So mangin continuous lang siya if okay, amo ni ang value dapat iset nimo nga for the certain value of sina nga function dapat amo ni i-answer. So kay nagbutang mo siya value, so removable siya. So that will be removable nga discontinuity. Non-removable siya if you have certain mga values nga, for example, duwa ka value of x. Duwa ka value of x like may ari ka di sa baba, may ari ka di sa lalom. Paano siya natabo? Because you have a absolute value. So whether positive or negative na values ang x, may ara ka na values. So for positive value of x, may ari ka di sini nga graph. For negative value of x, you have this graph. So may duwa ka value for a certain nga value of x. So that's it for removable discontinuity. So diretsyon na lang kita. So for discontinuity, may ara gid kita sang apat ka type of discontinuity. First, may ara kita removable. So para sa sanghinabal na kung kagina may holes ka lang dere. So that is removable nga discontinuity. Next, we have jump discontinuity. So may ari ka diri graph and then may ara kaliwat another nga graph, that is jump discontinuity. Infinite, so may infinite ka din nga value, that is infinite discontinuity, and you have essential discontinuity. So we are going to have this type of functions or discontinuities. First, we have removable discontinuity. A removable discontinuity is a point on the graph that is undefined or does not fit the rest of the graph. So there is a gap at that location when you are looking at the graph. So may ara ka hole. So paano siya gakatabo? May ara ka hole sa aton nga equation if ang aton nga function will be discontinuous sa sinang part. For example, ari indeterminate ang aton nga equation if ang aton nga value of x is 2. So this will be hindi pwede nga may-ari ka di value kay man indeterminate ang aton nga function. So leave naton siya as whole. So we are going to leave this as whole. This is what we refer to as your removable nga discontinuity. So same also with this one. Okay? So ma-discontinuous ay ma-indeterminate siya kung ang imo value is positive 2. So leave naton siya as whole. So amo lang muna siya ang removable nga discontinuity based sa graph. Next, jump discontinuity. So a discontinuity when the value of a function jumps from one piece to the graph of the graph to the other. So take note lang, makita mo man lang sa graph, specifically jump discontinuity, ginagamit na siya or nag-appear ni siya sa aton graph kung may ara kita piecewise ng mga functions. So amo ginakalabanan. So we have, okay, for example, may ara ka di isa ka graph and then may ara ka naman liwat another graph. So may ara ka naman liwat another graph. So, para sa sininga value of your x, may duwa ka value sang y. Para sa sininga value of x, may ka duwa ka value sang y. So, that is jump discontinuity. Okay, another one is infinite discontinuity. So, infinite discontinuity. In an infinite discontinuity, the one-sided limits exist as infinite. So for example, imo value b is 1 all over for example x squared. So this is ang matabo diri is your value of your x is mapasaka siya nga mapasaka. So despite sa ano pa nga value hindi siya mag approach a certain nga value. So sige-sige lang siya sa positive naton nga infinity of positive nga value of y. So that will be infinite discontinuity at 0. So approaching 0 siya but not really ano siya infinite lang iya nga value. That is infinite discontinuity. Next, we have essential discontinuity. So gakatabo ni siyang essential discontinuity if we have vertical asymptote sa aton nga graph. So or also we have step nga discontinuity. So parehas lang man Japan sang ginhimo or sang jump discontinuity, step discontinuity. So this is sometimes essential sa graph naton. So we have apat ka type of discontinuity. We have removable, we have jump discontinuity, we have also sang okay, lipat ko sang ikatlo. We have sang infinite discontinuity and we have essential discontinuity. So this is it para sa klase naton for your limits and continuity. So I do hope this video will help you para sa inyo preparation for the exam. So thank you guys, stay safe, and God bless.